Okay, welcome to English 1310 lecture on style. So I'm just going to talk you through. I call this a writer's guide to style. And this is for all of you who want to avoid seeing those comments in your essay. Awkward, wordy, redundant, or weak structure. So now here's the thing about style. It is difficult to learn because the rules are not as clear-cut as in grammar. I'm going to give you some basic guidelines. I'm also going to show you a lot of examples. Fair warning, these examples are from your papers, so you may see a sentence that looks familiar. They're all anonymous though, so nobody knows whose sentences are showing up. And I will say this, everyone had a sentence worthy of being in this PowerPoint as an example. So if you don't see your sentence, that doesn't mean you're automatically an excellent writer. I could just only choose a few examples. So there are a few basic guidelines, and with practice, you can learn to write clearly and efficiently. And practice really is key. You have two more essays. We have essay 4 and essay 5 for you to really try and get better at this, because it doesn't come naturally. You have to work at it. You have to revise. It's hard work. Writing well is hard work, but hopefully I can help you along the way a little bit. All right, so we're going to start with avoiding wordy and redundant, okay? So these are two comments I use. They're very similar, but there's a slight distinguishing factor. Wordy I'll use just when you have too many words, right? It could be said in a more concise way. Whereas redundant is a word I use when you essentially say the same thing twice, all right? And as a general rule, fewer words are better. You want to avoid fluff. The goal of writing is not just for you to get 500 words. I know some of you view it that way. I have to turn in an essay that's 500 words long, so I have to come up with 500 words. Well, that's not going to get you a good grade. A good essay, you have to have something to say. You have to have something significant. You have to have good content. And in general, when you convey your ideas, you want to avoid fluff, repetition, because that's boring. It's unnecessary for your reader. And also, and again, this speaks to the redundant comment, you want to avoid using multiple words that mean the same thing. And now I'll show you some examples of that. You guys are really bad about, especially with your verbs, using multiple verbs that really do mean, like strive and reach for your goal. Strive, reach means the same thing. You don't need both of those words. I'll show you more examples. All right, so let's start with an example. So this is a poor sentence. The student wrote, "It foreshadows the future, and the future should be something to look forward to, not resent." Now there needs to be a comma in there, but let me talk about a couple things. First of all, is it necessary for this student to use the word future twice? No, that's repetitive. It's redundant. It's unnecessary. And then the second half of the sentence is really just, it's wordy. There's got to be a more concise way to say that. So here's an improved example. Better. It foreshadows the future, which should be something to anticipate, not fear. All right, so you can see I eliminated the repetition of the word future. And also, instead of look forward to, I replace that with the word anticipate, which really means the same thing. It's just a better word. So this is what you should be looking for. Does it sound wordy? Does it sound like I'm using lots of words when it could be more concise? All right, let's look. I have a lot more examples. All right, here's another poor sentence. I actually included two sentences here to give you the full idea of how repetitive this was. There are several steps in the process of mowing your lawn. The steps to mowing your lawn are not hard, but there are steps to mowing properly. All right, so in the course of two sentences, the student used the word mowing 3 times when it was really unnecessary. Both of these sentences could easily be combined into one. All right, so let me show you a better way to say this. There are several steps in the process of mowing your lawn. They are not difficult, but must be performed properly. Okay, so I use the pronoun they to refer back to steps, so I don't have to keep saying steps over and over and over again because it's so repetitive. And I hope you guys can see and that it's just a better sentence. All right? It's clear, it's concise, and it's not repetitive. Okay? It's not wordy. Here's another example. All right, a lot of you do this. All right, the poor sentence. The reason he is hungry is because he skipped lunch. Now think about the word reason and because. Those mean the same thing. He is hungry. All right, the better sentence would be he is hungry because he skipped lunch. You don't need to say the reason is, because that's what the word because means. It's repetitive. It's wordy. It's unnecessary. All right? So it's always much better to be concise and precise. All right, more examples. Poor. You cannot start this process if you do not have a goal or an end result you are aiming at. All right, a little awkwardly worded, but the big thing I want you to see is the words goal and end result mean the same thing, right? You guys all do this. You all use two words in a row that mean the same thing. And maybe you feel, I think a lot of students feel like they're just being emphatic. They're emphasizing it, but it doesn't emphasize it. It's just repetitive. All right? So a better sentence would be, you cannot start this process without having a goal in mind. Much more streamlined. All right, another example. In order to everything right, you need to do everything correctly. Now, and I copied these verbatim from students' papers. I think the word do is missing. In order to do everything right, you need to do everything correctly. Now, you can kind of get the idea that the student is trying to get at, but at the end of the day, he's saying the same thing twice. All right? So it would be better just to say each step must be done correctly. All right? Be more concise. And I know some of you are thinking, well, if I make all of my sentences this short, it's going to be choppy. Now, here's the thing. In a paragraph, most of you may have, 2 sentences that are like this. All right? And you can streamline them, and you can still reach your word count. It's not going to change things that much, but it will make the overall flow of your paper better. All right, so let's move on to the next big category, the dreaded awkward or weak structure. Now, these are a little harder to explain. There are a couple general rules. First of all, lists and verbs should always be grammatically parallel. So if you have a list that includes verbs, it should all be the same verb form. And also, you should always stay in the same verb tense. All right, so don't jump around from present to past. All right, so here's an example. So the poor sentence reads like this. So, regrouping and focus on meeting your goal again will make the difference. So you can see the student is using 2 verbs as the subject of the sentence. The first one is correct. Regrouping will make the difference, right? But focus needs to be changed to also an ing verb, so they're parallel. So regrouping and focusing on meeting your goal again will make the difference. Does that make sense? So whenever you have 2 verbs used in a parallel sense, they need to be the parallel form of verb. I have more examples to show you of this. All right, so here's where we have verbs used in the list. I've learned that there is nothing more important than being rich, looking fine, and to have a good time. All right, so again, we see ing verb, and then a switch to an infinitive form of verb. And so the better method would be, I've learned that there is nothing more important than being rich, looking fine, and having a good time. That parallelism is really important. And that's another comment. I might actually use that word, parallelism, or I might just say weak structure on your sentence if you have this type of error. Another example, and this has to do with verb tense. I stopped my car at a safe place only to realize my tire has gone flat. All right, so we have the first verb is past tense, and then the second verb is present tense. All right, so to be consistent, you want to say, I stopped my car at a safe place only to realize my tire had gone flat. All right, stay consistent in the past tense or the present tense. Whichever you choose, you want that to be consistent throughout your paper, particularly within the same sentence. Otherwise, it's just very weakly structured. All right. In general, you want to avoid beginning a sentence with a preposition. Sometimes it can work if it's just an introductory phrase like after dinner. But particularly, beginning a sentence with the word with is just very awkward. All right, let me give you an example. With me being tired, there was no way I could run the mile. And this is a structure that I find students using more and more, beginning a sentence with, and it's just awkward. A better way to write that would be because I was tired, there was no way I could run the mile. Because is a much more precise word. It has nothing like nobody is with you. You can't run the mile because you're tired. So just watch out for that one, beginning a sentence with. And then finally, sometimes a sentence is just awkward or unclear. And to look for this, really, here's the key. You have to write your paper ahead of time and be able to go back and read it. Because I know some of you, when you get your papers back and you read those sentences, you're like, oh, yeah, that is awkward. Oh, yeah, that's a terrible sentence. It's because you wrote it the night before and you didn't take time to proofread. If you had given it some time and been able to come back to it a day later, you may have been able to find the clarity issues. All right. So here are just, again, some examples where I can't give you a specific rule for why the sentence is awkward or weakly structured. It just is. Stretching your muscles will also exert your body to help. To help what? To help whom? It's unclear. Stretching will exert your body. That kind of makes sense, but I don't even have an example of how to improve this sentence because I think it just you need to start over. It's just an awkward sentence. Talk about how it is an inconvenience to have to go through all this walking to get to a certain place. Now this to me is actually a precision issue. You don't go through walking, you walk, all right? So to be more clear, talk about how it is an inconvenience to have to walk far or walk a long distance to get to a certain place. You don't go through walking. So that's just awkward. And then finally, therefore, how many people are coming to this event is key on to where you are going to rent a place. Again, that phrase, key on to where. I don't really know what that means. It's very unclear. And I think this student means how many people are coming to this event is essential in deciding where you're going to rent a place. But it needs to be written in a more clear way. All right, so I know this is a really short video and these are just a few little tips, but hopefully they will help you as you work on Essay 4, as we work in class, in moving forward and being a better writer.